Hey, so for this one, I'm doing Elon Musk. And you might be asking if you've seen my other videos, what the is going on with his hair? And I was like, you know what? I'm feeling a bit Kramer right now, and I'm just going to embrace it. So I did. Elon Musk, what a fascinating geezer. Right? Geezer. If you're a Pom or an Englishman or woman, you'd know what a geezer is. Now, I've done a long podcast before on Elon, and it was about an hour long, and I went balls deep into who he is, where he's come from. So this one is a slightly more high-level overview, bit of a shotgun approach to who Elon Musk is, bit of a chat GPT approach to Elon Musk, where I trim some of the fat and give you those lean cuts of characterology sweetness. Now, Elon is what is known as a rigid schizoid. So that's two characters merged together. And for those of you that don't know what characterology is, you're born with all five, and then as you grow up, two tends to tease out as the most potent. Two defenses to who you really are at the core appear. And to work through these patterns and character defenses requires specific therapy in order to unravel them, expose them, and integrate them. And this is a combination of higher self-work and lower self-work. And it's confrontational, and it requires a willingness to die to the old version of yourself. So, in that, the main thing that shows up for me when I look at Elon and his body and his behavior is the heart and pelvic split. And this is very common in rigids, because they struggle in relationships. And this guy has had some relationships, right? So the heart-pelvic split can make you feel attracted to one person physically and then emotionally attracted to another person. So like your feelings, right? You can share his heart and soul to one person, and that could be his mum, or it could be the mother of his children. Now, if you look at his dating career, you'll see that he's had some very interesting characters. All right. Even at one point, Grimes. You know, and she's into the whole transhumanist life after death thing. And the rigid piece here is deep down they're sad. Okay. So when I look at Elon Musk and you get a chance to have a look at his face and his eyes, there's this sadness about him. And this sadness can be propped up with achievement, right? Whether it's doing 120 hours a week at his Tesla factory, or if it's making a new business or arguing with someone on Twitter, there can be this overcompensation of sadness through achievement, right? And in that, either choice is wrong, right? Whatever he does is wrong. There's something that you get stuck on the edge of either choice is wrong here. There's a double bind here. The perfection that comes out in a rigid can be like, oh, either choice is wrong. I don't know what to do. And so you can be stuck on the edge of making a decision until pressure comes in and you need to make a choice. But if there's humiliation involved, like if you're afraid to fall on your face, or there's a risk that what you've said is going to be held up against you in a court or a peer review, there can really be this terror that appears for a rigid. So the worst thing a rigid can do is to be humiliated in front of other people, especially when they're achieving something, when they're doing something they really feel like they've committed to or they're devoted to, or gives them their sense of identity. Now, the strengths of the rigid is, he's organized, he's systems orientated, results orientated, he's competitive, he's productive, right? And there can be a real directness there with the rigid, right? This needs to happen. But in that, the weakness is rigid thinking. It can be stuck. It can be stuck in this way of being. And the schizoid, when you back in the schizoid and the rigid together, the schizoid's got unrealistic goals of perfection. Unrealistic. And the rigid is tapered a little bit. Their perfection's a little bit more, I can factor in some humanity here. But in that humanity piece, there can be a sharpness to how they communicate that perfection to somebody else, right? So pride is a big thing for a rigid. Fearing rejection and fearing failure. So for someone like Musk, you can see in his career that failure isn't really an option, and it's deliberate if there is any, right? So I guess you wouldn't call that failure if it's deliberate, right? So other rigids are Alexander Jolie, Brad Pitt, and Tupac. Now, the life lesson for a rigid in this heart and pelvic split, like to join the heart and the pelvis again, requires him to embrace that he can love again. And in the podcast that I did that was much longer, I spoke to his relationship with his ex-wife. I'm the one that bore his children. And his relationship with his children, where I could see that just being in their presence, he thought he was with them. He was present because he was with them, right? And it's far from the truth. And having a child of my own, knowing that they're always craving attention, and if I choose to be on my phone, I can feel that I'm not really with him right now. That's Elon. I wasn't with him. And that's a model that he got from his father, which can really feed this rigid injury, right? Especially if he's competing with his father. Now, what else shows up for Elon here is his dancing, right? You've seen him dance, and he dances from his head, right? And this is part of the rigid. This is part of the heart and pelvic split. It's also slightly schizoidal. He doesn't feel like he's in his body. It's like this awkward thing. He doesn't know how to use his body. So dancing is a feminine trait, mostly, and it's sexual. There's a sensuousness to dance that Elon hasn't seemed to master, and that comes from the heart and pelvic split. So particularly with someone who's got a little bit more schizoid, like Elon does, that wanting to try and join his body up with what he wants to do, or listen to the music, interpret the music and dance, that's a real heady thing to do. You see him move. Like, if you haven't checked him out, go and have a look how he dances, right? I feel for him. Like he might feel like he's doing it okay, but I think he's overpowering something, right? To really allow him to come into his body and be himself would need him to connect to his humanity and connect to his heart. And in that, for a schizoid in particular, to connect to their heart and their body is terrifying. Because for a schizoid, there's existential terror, which is anger and fear frozen in the past. And this schizoid trait in Elon feeds his existential fear of AI and his lust for transhumanism. Now, if you're not familiar with transhumanism, or if you're one of those spiritual people that thinks it's like a really scary thing that's trying to steal your soul, first of all, sort out your schizoid injury. It's a schizoid fear to be afraid of that, okay? And I know many healers out there who follow a certain person who is attached to this theory that transhumanism is out to steal your soul. It's not. And if you live by that fear, you'll miss out on the technology that transhumanism has to offer. So this is the trajectory of humanity. This is where we're going, is technology, right? So the more you fear it, the more you're just going to create what you fear. So if you're someone who has issues with your phone breaking down, your laptop crashing, things that are electronics that are not working, I'd assert that you have a schizoid injury because you don't trust things. You don't trust technology, you don't trust things that are not human. You even have trouble trusting humans. So in that, with the schizoid and the fear of existential annihilation, there can be this thirst for living forever in something that's not human, because this flesh suit is so fragile, right? Doesn't matter what your end of life plan is, you can still die, right? Even if you want to go into cryogenics, which I'm sure Elon Musk was. I was looking at cryogenics at some point within the transhumanist movement. How could I live forever? How could I cheat death? And that was my schizoid injury. And journeying into the body and into death requires letting go of this notion that you are not human and that you have a soul and you have a spirit and you have an unconscious, and your unconscious ties in with the collective unconscious, and who you are is a fragment of the divine. Who you are is a fragment of the expression of consciousness right now in this flesh suit. So the sooner you understand how to trust yourself, trust your body, trust your intuition, trust that whatever it is that you say and what you do is who you are, the more joy and fulfillment you're going to get out of life. Like you live life to the fullest. You live this flesh suit life to the fullest. And for those people who are pushing the transhumanist technology like augmentation, limb replacement, neural links, blah, 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 like you do you. You do whatever it is that you feel like you need to do, that you're called to do while you're here. And if they're trusting their intuition, which maybe they are, maybe they aren't, then you don't know where the technology is going to go. What's most important is you trust you. You trust what you're doing. So in that Neuralink technology, whatever he's designing, it might lead to other technologies which can help us do other things, right? So if you live in fear of technology, then you're always going to try and fighting against it and avoiding doing what you're here to do, right? What are you here to do? And if you don't know that, then I assert you don't trust yourself, and I've got plenty of tools and technology to help you learn how to do that. Back to Elon. So there's part of Elon that wants to have Neuralink, right? And living forever or interfacing with technology. And this is part of his need to be webbed in, linked in, and be superior. And superiority can be a thing that comes in with the rigid injury. And this is where you start teetering into the psychopathic component of rigidity. And Elon's an interesting one because he's quite a fragmented individual where he bounces between the passive feminine rigid, the phallic narcissistic rigid, and the psychopath. He works those really well. So I don't know if he's got a coach or if he's got someone that he's been working through some of his childhood injuries or a therapist. But as I've seen him progress over the years, there's something about him that's leveling out. And if I look to his father, like I see his father as that rigid psychopath. Now, didn't really take care of Elon, questionable traits of his relationships with Elon's partners. And in all of this Elon, in the schizoid component of Elon, there could be this, should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go? And this is the negative intent behind the schizoid. Should I stay or should I go? And you can see this in his relationships. Should I stay or should I go? And maybe he leaves it up to the partner to make that choice. Should I stay or should I go? And this double binds, this dovetails into the rigid wound of like sex versus love, right? So sex just being this physical carnal act where there's no real intimacy there, especially after like a 3, 6, or 9 month period. And what I tell my clients is that 3, 6, 9 month period, there's a key intervals in establishing whether or not this relationship is going to work. So after that 9 month period, if you haven't fulfilled the tick boxes, the credentials that are required for this relationship, you can just get stuck in a relationship and you think it's going to work. You convince your instinct that it was wrong. All of those red and orange flags that showed up in the initial part of the relationship are still there. You don't speak to them. So for Elon, if he's not sorted out his relationship in the first 3 months, it starts to override some of these instinctual injuries that he has around being with someone and not really loving them, or loving them for some kind of leverage, right? Or loving them for status, right? So the other part of the rigid is wanting to become more perfect, but then being able to controlling their emotions. And what a rigid can also do is they have a high amount of vitality that lives on the outside of their body. So they can execute really well. They can complete tasks. They can, like Elon at one of the articles that I was researching here, he set up 120 hours. 120 hours to prove to his staff that if they were suffering, he was going to suffer. And they've got a high energy intellect and willpower backing up all of that. So if they're going to achieve something, they will just like, we're doing this thing. We're getting in there. But in that, you sacrifice the body. The body can become brittle. The body can become a tool to enact whatever the end goal is. And that double binds back in with the schizoid, where they kind of vacate the physical body. They can spend a lot of time in mental realms, and he does that. He's a very intelligent man. And the schizoid gives you a direct connection into the thought form, the demiurge that is the mind, right? This collective cloud that is the Maya. It is the illusion. And he can pull down all the ideas about his rockets and whatever else he needs to do. And they're perfect. Like it's him. That's the gift of the intuitive, is they can channel in, they can bring in this genius, right? And then the rigid component can show that sign of due diligence, that he's an executor. He's not just this visionary with pie in the sky ideas that doesn't execute. The achiever brings those ideas into reality. To the schizoid, the ideas, the achiever, the execution. And this makes that perfect team, the perfect union. But like I said, he suffers in relationships. So if I Google right now, Elon Musk dating history, great. Here we go. August 2018. It's too late. 22, 23. Here we go. 26th of March. Here we go. Secret twins with an executive, got divorced 3 times, and was seen at the Super Bowl with Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch. Yeah, great. So in this, who we got here? When I was a child, there was one thing I said, I never want to be alone. I mentioned this in my other podcast, my long podcast with Elon. And I might show those, tag that in the show notes. But not being alone is a schizoid thing. There can be this split. Again, do I stay? Should I stay or should I go? I'm okay with being of worth just because I exist. So their defense is vacates the physical body. Also, I've mentioned this before in other episodes, but the sexuality of the schizoid is to have sex to feel the life force. Sex to feel the life force. So once he's outside of his rigid injury, when he's finished achieving, and he's like, oh, I finished achieving for the day. It's like, cool, now I'm exhausted. Cool, let's have some sex. Let's go dance. Let's go party. But sex is really the juice for a schizoid to make them feel alive. Feel that life force. And Elon lost one of his kids to sudden infant death syndrome. And I don't know if he actually grieved all of that. I don't think he did. And I think there's this existential anxiety that was fed by when his child died. And of course, like I've mentioned in all of my other episodes where I speak to famous characters or people that I haven't worked with, is that I haven't interviewed him. He's not sitting face to face with me in a therapeutic environment. This is purely for entertainment purposes. And if I was interviewing him, if I was taking him through a therapy session, if he actually wanted to have relationships that work for him, then I would inquire about his relationship past, the constellation of his relationship past, like where Where does he feel he's gone wrong? Where does he feel his partners have gone wrong? What's the pattern that plays out? What's the timeline? Where does he meet these people? What does he really want in a relationship? What does he really want? If it's just to be alone, he just doesn't want to be alone. He still carries that injury, which I think he does. He still carries that injury. Then being able to fill that void, and this is more of an oral injury, fill that void of being alone. I know I said before the schizoid, it's actually more oral. Filling the void of being alone requires a connection to something that's much bigger than he is, which could be humanity or it could be like a god or something, right? Otherwise, he's looking for it in humans, in human connection, and that might work for a bit, but then he'll get bored. So Elon's been married a few times. Dated Amber Heard, in 2016. I don't think he dodged a bullet there. Grimes, quietly dating for a few weeks. He loves Grimes for her wild, fey, artistic creativity and hyper-intense work ethic. And Grimes is a schizoid. Mad schizoid. No, could be having a baby with Musk as well. What else have we got here? Yeah, September 2021, Musk told Page 6 that he and Grimes had broken up. It's mostly that my work at SpaceX and Tesla requires me to be primarily in Texas or traveling overseas, and her work is primarily in LA, Musk said at the time. So they continued to co-parent and secretly had a baby girl via surrogate named Exa Dark Sidereal Musk. Sidereal. Interesting. Sidereal is a type of astrology. I didn't know that. That's great. Sidereal. The true time of the universe. Yeah, great, cute. Anyway, so I'm going on a bit here, doing some more research here, which might be interesting for you, or Luke and his magicians that work on his team will cut this all out. Yeah, right. So here we go. April 2022. Musk's 18-year-old daughter, I'm reading from the Business Insider, an article that they posted, updated 2023. So here we go. Musk's 18-year-old daughter, who is transgender, applied to legally change her name to confirm her gender identity and to distance herself from Musk. In the filing, she wrote that she no longer wishes to live with or to be related to my biological father in any way, shape, or form. And Musk had repeatedly mocked gender pronouns, posting tweets and memes that have drawn the ire of everyone from former NASA astronaut Scott Calder Grimes. I cannot support hate. Yeah, great. Because apparently you're not allowed to have opinions. Musk had twins with Siobhan Zillis, an executive of Musk's brain chip company. So he's just can't keep his knob in his pants, which is a classic rigid thing. Yeah, right. Affair with Nicole Shanahan, the wife of longtime friend Sergio Brin. So basically, what I see in all of this with old musky pants is that we have a man here who's at the helm of some incredible technology, being able to launch things into space, rockets into space. I think he'll be at the forefront of leading mining of asteroids and of bringing humanity into space. And this is what the schizoid and the rigid can do. Is the schizoid can create the genius. Schizoids are geniuses. And the rigid can really create things. What both of these types can really struggle with is relationships. And this is what I see from Elon. And being able to navigate space in relationships, being able to navigate closeness, being able to feel that he wants to leave a legacy behind, but then is unsure about, well, if there's no legacy, then what's my purpose? What am I here for? Is my value in my legacy or is my value in my children? What am I really leaving behind? And if his 18-year-old daughter, doesn't want anything to do with her father, this has been a journey that's been long. This has been ongoing, right? A child just doesn't turn their back on you. It's an ongoing thing. And this is the recklessness of fathers that cannot keep their dick in their pants, who don't know how to heal their rigid injury, and then just go out there and have lots of baby mamas, right? And sure, he's famous, but there's plenty of men out there that are like this, where they have a heart and pelvic split. A lot of them are from the pickup artistry world, where they feel like if they just learn how to talk to a woman and bed them, that's all that they need to do. No, well, you can. By all means, keep on doing that. You might end up with being a baby daddy, or the skills only last until the first 3 months, unless you have women on rotation. But if you actually want a relationship, if you want to create a legacy beyond some physical thing, like leave children behind, leave a genetic imprint of who you are and who you were, then being able to form loving relationships is really important, right? So if you imagine the man Elon Musk who sorted out his schizoid injury and the rigid injury, we may not have all the technology that we have. He may not have bought Twitter. He may not have designed all of Tesla and not designed all of Tesla, be at the forefront of Tesla. Might not be the genius that we know today. Or he may have been. He may have been all those things, and he knew how to have a relationship. He knew how to raise children. He knew how to love a child outside of not wanting to be alone. So if you're listening to this and you feel like there's an aloneness in you, that you're afraid to be alone, that you're someone who desperately needs to feed this hunger to be with somebody, because when you're not achieving, you feel this existential anxiety of, why am I here? What am I doing when I'm not achieving? Then maybe having a child is not the best option for you right now. Maybe you need to deal with that aloneness and deal with it in a way where you bring awareness to it. You don't react to it. You bring awareness to your aloneness. So you stop back-to-backing relationships, You stop taking advantage of situations where there's an opportunity to be adulterous and have that fling. And it always takes two to do this. And usually the other man, the affairs that he had, maybe the other man was not present to what was really going on in their relationship. Maybe the union in all of these couples are not solid. Maybe these entrepreneurs that Elon rubs shoulders with all have this heart and pelvic split. Because the heart and pelvic split encourages cheating. It encourages infidelity. Because there's no value in the relationship. It's either purely physical or purely emotional. And to have a loving relationship that lasts, you need to merge the two. And the technology behind that, you can't just go and sort out your heart and pelvic split. It's a journey to get there. It's like, cool, sign me up, John. Show me how to heal my heart and pelvic split. That's my issue. Could be. But sometimes there's 3 or 4 defenses before we can get to that point, because your heart needs to be open, and so does your willingness to look at your sexual proclivities. And if you're unwilling to have a look at your sexual proclivities, then most of the inner work that you're going to do is pointless. Because sexual chemistry, potency, vitality, it's at the fulcrum of life. Do you want to be here or not? Well, maybe you need to embrace your sexuality in all its forms, from the kinks to how you want to express yourself in the next generation. Thank you for listening. Bye.